Is that his daughter? Olivia, what are you doing here?
Introducing you to the one person you've tried hardest to forget.
The envelope was too heavy to be innocent. It sat in the middle of Olivia Grant's chipped kitchen table like a golden brick, its edges catching the pale morning light that leaked through the blinds. She stared at it while the kettle hissed behind her, steam curling into the air. The cardstock gleamed under her thumb as she slid it closer, the name embossed in a sharp serif font. Ms. Olivia Grant. Her hands already knew before her mind did. That weight, that gold leaf trim, that particular indulgence in paper no one else could afford, except him. The kettle whined into a shriek, but she didn't move. Her fingers worked at the flap, slow, cautious, as though opening it too quickly might make something inside explode. A thick card slid free, heavy enough to fall with a muted thunk against the wood. She read the first line. Damien Cole and Catherine Voss request the honor of your presence at their wedding. Her mouth went dry. There was no surprise in seeing Damien's name, Billionaire CEO, the man who once swore forever to her in a rose garden full of paparazzi lenses. The shock was in the name beside his, Catherine Voss, the one she'd seen once in the reflection of a boutique window, Damien's hand brushing Catherine's hair back in a way that used to be hers. The same woman whispered about in magazine. Blind Items, a close friend of the COLE Group founder. The one Olivia had been too pregnant and too humiliated to confront back then. Her fingers trembled on the page. Mom. Emily's voice was soft, still heavy with sleep. Olivia looked up to see her daughter standing barefoot in the kitchen doorway, her hair a halo of messy curls. Emily rubbed her eyes, then spotted the envelope. What's that? Olivia slid the card half under her palm. Just mail. Emily patted closer, peering with open curiosity. It's fancy. It's nothing important. Olivia tried to sound casual, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. She tucked the invitation back into its envelope, as if hiding it could. Erase the words. Emily tilted her head. Why do you look like you saw a ghost? Olivia managed a smile, weak and paper-thin. Maybe I did. The girl laughed, not knowing how close to the truth she was. The smell of burnt toast broke the moment. Olivia pulled the bread from the toaster, shaking off the charred edges. Emily sat down, chin propped on her palm, studying her mother the way only a child could, quietly, without blinking. Olivia tried to busy herself. Butter, jam, plates, anything to keep her hands moving. But the invitation was a weight in the room, its presence louder than the clink of knives or the hum of the refrigerator. You're thinking really hard, Emily said. Olivia glanced at her. What makes you say that? Your eyebrows do this thing when you're mad. And you're doing it now. Emily reached across the table, pressing her small fingers to Olivia's forehead. Olivia laughed despite herself. I'm not mad, just surprised. About the ghost mail? Something like that. She dropped Emily off at school a half hour later, kissed her cheek, and watched her disappear into the crowd of children. Olivia sat in the car longer than necessary, staring at the steering wheel. There was no part of her that wanted to step back into Damien's world. And yet, some part of her hand, the one that had slid the invitation into her purse instead of the trash, betrayed her. By the time she returned to her shift at the cafe, the gold envelope felt like it was burning a hole through her bag. Girl, what's with the storm cloud face? Asked Carla, her co-worker, while stacking muffins into the display case. Olivia hesitated. I got an invitation. From who? A cult. My ex-husband. Carla froze mid-stack. The ex-husband? The billionaire one. Olivia didn't answer. That was answer enough. Carla set down the tray. Oh, hell no. What does he want? To marry someone else, apparently. Carla's eyebrows shot up. And he invited you? That's psychotic. Olivia smirked faintly. Sounds like him. Her lunch break was quiet. She sat outside, coffee cooling beside her, the invitation spread on her lap. The details were clinical in their perfection. The venue a vineyard in Napa, the date just 2 months away, the RSVP card already addressed. She wondered if Damien had even written her name himself, or if some assistant had sent it, ticking her off a list like an old debt. But then she thought of his smirk, the one he wore when he wanted to see her squirm. Maybe this was deliberate. The thought made her pulse quicken, anger mixing with something darker, a flicker of opportunity. When she picked Emily up that afternoon, the girl clambered into the car with a drawing from art class, a crayon. Sketch of the two of them holding hands under a bright sun, You didn't draw a dad," Olivia said before she could stop herself. Emily shrugged. "I've never seen him." The words were simple, but they landed like stones in Olivia's chest. "Do you ever want to?" Olivia asked, her voice too careful. Emily frowned in thought. "Sometimes. I just don't know if he'd want to see me." Olivia gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. She forced a smile for her daughter's sake. Maybe someday. That night, after Emily was asleep, Olivia sat alone in the kitchen. The invitation lay open on the table, the gold edges catching the light of a single lamp. She traced Damien's name with her fingertip, feeling the sharp ridges of the embossed letters. It had been almost a decade since she'd stood in front of him. Almost a decade since she'd left their glass-walled mansion with nothing but a suitcase and a child kicking in her belly. The memory was still sharp, the way he hadn't chased her, the way his lawyers had stripped her clean, that she'd rebuilt her life from scratch. No alimony, no child support, no acknowledgement, and now this, she could throw it away. Pretend it never came. Or her mind lingered on the or like it was. A forbidden door. A public wedding meant cameras, guests, witnesses. And if she showed up with Emily, Olivia's pulse quickened. She picked up the RSVP card, stared at the tiny boxes, accepts with pleasure, declines with regret. Her pen hovered. She ticked the first box. Then she wrote, in neat script, Olivia Grant +1. The first time Olivia saw Damien Cole, she thought he looked like a man who had never been told no. It was at a charity gala. All glass walls and champagne flutes. The kind of place where she felt like an imposter in her borrowed dress. He was at the center of the room, holding court, the sharp black lines of his tuxedo making him look carved from shadow. When their eyes met, something passed between them. Not lightning, not fire, but an unshakable certainty. 3 months later, they were married. Life with Damien in the beginning was intoxicating. Breakfasts in Paris, long weekends in private villas with infinity pools, a car in every color, just because he could. The man was a storm of charm and power, and she, young, dazzled, in love, had been willing to let herself be carried by it. She told herself the flashes of arrogance were part of the package. The way he dismissed waiters without looking at them. The way he cut people off mid-sentence if their point didn't serve his own. "You just don't understand," he would say when she questioned it. "This is how people at my level operate." At his level, she didn't realize then that those 3 words would be the first crack in the foundation. The nights he came home late started slowly. First once a week, then more. The explanations were always the same. Investor dinner. Emergency meeting. "You wouldn't understand how much pressure I'm under." At first, she believed him. Then she tried not to believe the whispers. A new face in the office. A friend seen leaving his penthouse building when she was supposed to be out of town. One night, she couldn't sleep. The sheets were cold on his side of the bed. She wandered to the kitchen for tea and noticed his phone on the counter. She knew she shouldn't. She told herself she wouldn't. But her fingers unlocked it like muscle memory. There it was. Texts. A name she didn't recognize. Dinner was amazing. You spoil me. Can't wait for Friday. Same hotel. The blood in her ears roared so loudly she didn't hear him come in. "What are you doing with my phone?" His voice was sharp, the warmth gone. She held it up, shaking. "Who's Kay?" He laughed, short and cruel. "You've lost your mind. You're cheating on me." He stepped closer, towering over her. "You're paranoid." "That's pathetic, Olivia." The shame burned hotter than the anger. She set the phone down like it was something filthy and walked away. 2 weeks later, the truth stopped being deniable. She'd left a dinner party early, exhausted and queasy. The pregnancy had been harder on her than she'd expected. His car wasn't in the driveway when she got home. Something made her take a cab to the penthouse downtown. The doorman hesitated, but she was still Mrs. Cole then. She took the elevator up, heart thudding. The door to the master suite was open just enough to see Damien. Catherine. Sheets twisted, champagne glasses on the nightstand. Her laugh, that same bright, hollow sound Olivia had heard at the gala years ago, except this time it was followed by the sound of Damien's voice, low and intimate. The sight stole her breath. Not because she hadn't suspected, but because seeing it made every excuse, every denial, every forced smile collapse at once. Her hand went to her belly before she even realized it. She didn't knock. She didn't scream. She just turned and walked away, heels clicking on marble until she reached the elevator and let the doors shut her in. The lawyers came the next day. Damien didn't come himself. Instead, two men in immaculate suits arrived with folders and polite expressions. That didn't reach their eyes. It's a simple agreement. One said, sliding papers toward her. You'll receive a generous settlement, and in exchange, you'll agree not to make any public statements that could damage Mr. Cole's reputation. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. Generous. She scanned the numbers. It was enough to rent a small apartment. For maybe a year. Not enough for the kind of life she'd built with him. Not enough for the child she carried. This is a prenup, she said flatly. You signed it before the wedding. The other lawyer reminded her, voice smooth. It was clear about spousal support. This offer is above what's required. Her chest tightened. She remembered the day Damien had slipped that document in front of her, all charm and confidence. Just a formality, Liv. Protects us both. She'd signed without reading the fine print, blinded by the glitter of their life together. I'm pregnant, she said, voice shaking. One of them adjusted his cufflinks. That changes nothing under the agreement. Her breath caught. He's the father. He's responsible. Mr. Cole is prepared to meet his legal obligations in private. But public acknowledgement, the man's eyes met hers, cold as glass. That's not on the table. The rain started just as she was packing. She moved through the mansion like a ghost, her suitcase dragging against the polished floor. Every room felt like a crime scene. The kitchen where they'd once made pasta at midnight. The balcony where he'd promised they'd grow old together. She didn't take much. Just clothes. A few keepsakes. The ultrasound photo she'd tucked in. Her purse. Damien stood in the doorway of his study, arms folded. This is for the best, Liv. You don't want to be the bitter ex who drags this out. She stared at him. You don't get to tell me what I am. His jaw tightened. Don't make this harder than it has to be. She almost laughed. Harder than this. She was leaving the man she'd once thought was the love of her life, carrying his child, and walking into a future she couldn't even see yet. You'll regret this, he added, as if the words were a gift. She didn't answer. The rain was heavier by the time she reached the driveway. It soaked her hair, ran down her face, blurred the lights of the city beyond the gates. She gripped her suitcase handle, the leather slick in her hand. For a moment, she looked back. The mansion stood tall and perfect, every light on, the picture of wealth and power. Inside was the man she'd loved, or maybe the man she'd invented. To survive loving him, her hand drifted to her stomach, feeling the faintest curve of the life inside. Then she turned away, walking into the rain. Each step carrying her further from Damien's world and deeper into her own. The apartment smelled faintly of cinnamon and laundry detergent, not by design, but because the only way Olivia could heat the space in winter was to keep the oven on and a batch of cookies. And it was a far cry from the marble and glass mansion she had once called home. The living room was a patchwork of thrift store finds, a couch that sloped to one side, a coffee table painted over to hide scratches, mismatched cushions that Emily insisted gave the place character. Olivia preferred to think of it as the life they made rather than the life they were left with. Emily came into the world on a cold February morning. Olivia remembered the fluorescent glare of the hospital room, the hollow space beside her bed where no one came to hold her hand. She'd stared at the tiny face in her arms, dark eyes, stubborn chin, and knew instantly she wouldn't tell Damien. Not now. Not when the only thing he could offer was a name on a birth certificate and more ways to hurt her. When Emily was old enough to ask about her father, Olivia kept her voice light. He wasn't ready to be a dad, sweetheart. But you have me, and that's enough. It was a lie wrapped in love, the kind that hurt in slow doses. Life became a constant juggle. In the mornings, Olivia worked the early shift at the cafe. Afternoons were spent cleaning offices, empty, silent spaces where she sometimes caught herself staring out the windows at the city skyline, wondering if Damien was behind one of those glass towers, signing million-dollar deals while she scrubbed coffee rings off boardroom tables. Every payday was a balancing act. Rent, groceries, Emily's school shoes, electricity. There was no room for indulgences, but Olivia found small ways to make life bright. Saturday morning pancakes, thrift store dresses turned into something new with a needle and thread, a movie night with popcorn and mismatched bowls. she learned to live without resentment. Or at least, she thought she had. Damien's name was everywhere. Magazine covers at the grocery checkout. Coal Industries CEO doubles net worth. Billboards with his sharp, confident smile advertising a new luxury development. TV interviews where he spoke about integrity and leadership as though he'd invented it. Olivia changed the channel, flipped the magazine over. But sometimes Emily caught a glimpse. "Hey, that guy looks like me," she'd say once, pointing at the screen. Olivia's heart would lurch, but she'd answer with a quick, "Lots of people have brown eyes and curly hair." When Emily turned 9, the questions became sharper. "Mom, why don't I have a dad like the other kids?" Olivia put down the dish she was drying. "You do have a dad. He just doesn't live with us." "Where does he live?" Olivia hesitated. "Far away." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Is he dead?" The word hit Olivia like a punch. "No, honey, he's not dead." "Then why doesn't he visit?" Olivia swallowed. "Because he wasn't ready to be a dad when you were born." Emily was quiet for a moment, processing. "Well, maybe he's ready now." Olivia forced a smile, but inside her chest, something old and unfinished twisted tight. That night, after Emily was asleep, Olivia went to the back of her closet. She pulled down a shoebox from the top shelf, its cardboard worn soft at the edges. Inside was the life she had buried. The ultrasound photoed out a wedding picture where Damien's hand was at the small of her back, possessive and perfect at a copy of. The prenup, crisp as the day she signed it. A DNA test she'd taken quietly when Emily was a toddler, confirming what she'd always known. A magazine clipping of Damien at a charity gala with Catherine, Emily's birth year, in the caption. Olivia sifted through them slowly, the paper whispering in her hands. She told herself she kept them for Emily, for the day she might ask for proof. But some nights, she suspected she kept them for herself, proof that she hadn't imagined it, that it had all been real once, before it rotted. The turning point came on a rainy Sunday. Emily was sprawled on the rug with colored pencils, drawing a family for her school project. A mother, a daughter, and, in the corner, a man in a suit whose face was only half finished. "Who's that?" Olivia asked. Emily shrugged. "Dad. I don't know what he looks like, so I made him up." Olivia felt her throat tighten. "Do you want to know?" Emily looked up, eyes bright. "Yeah, don't you?" Olivia opened her mouth, then closed it. She wanted to say, "I already do." She wanted to tell her everything, from the glittering nights to the cold marble mornings. But she saw the hope in her daughter's face, the dangerous, fragile hope, and she couldn't bring herself to crush it. "Maybe someday," she said instead, her voice almost steady. After Emily went to bed, Olivia took the box from the closet again. She sat at the kitchen table, its contents spread in front of her like a case file. Her hands lingered on the DNA test. She could take it to court, force him to acknowledge Emily, force him to pay. But with his money and lawyers, it could take years, and the cost wouldn't just be in legal fees. It would be in exposing Emily to him. Still, she found herself imagining it. Damien's face when he saw Emily for the first time. The recognition he wouldn't be able to hide. She closed the box, sliding it back into the closet. For now, the years that followed fell into a rhythm. Emily grew taller, her questions growing with her. Olivia worked more hours, took night classes. To move into a better-paying job, they moved into a slightly larger apartment, one with real heating, but Damien never faded from the edges of their lives. His name popped up in news feeds, his company's ads slipped into commercial breaks. Sometimes, she caught Emily looking a second too long at his face on the TV. And Olivia knew the day was coming when hiding the truth would no longer be an option. It arrived quietly, in the form of a gold-edged envelope. The invitation sat in the center of Olivia's kitchen table for 3 days, untouched except for the moments when she caught herself staring at it like it might speak. It didn't. It just gleamed there, gold-edged and smug, as if it knew it had already done its damage. By the 4th day, she called Carla. "You're not seriously thinking about going?" Carla said the second she heard the word wedding. "I haven't decided," Olivia replied, cradling the phone between her shoulder and cheek as she rinsed coffee mugs. Carla let out a sharp laugh. "That man nearly ruined you. Now you want to watch him marry the woman he cheated with? That's a front row seat to your own funeral." Olivia turned off the tap. "It's not about watching. What's it about then?" Olivia hesitated. her eyes drifting to the living room where Emily was curled up with a book. It's about being seen. Seen by who? Damien. Carla's tone softened. Liv, the only thing you'll get from that man is another wound. And this time, it won't heal so easy. But Olivia wasn't so sure. That night, she sat at her small desk after Emily was asleep and opened her laptop. She typed Damien Cole, wedding into the search bar. Pages of results appeared, glossy engagement photos, profiles of Catherine Voss, speculation about the guest list. She clicked through them all, absorbing the details. Venue, Napa Valley. Guest count, 300. Press, confirmed. A public stage, cameras everywhere. And Damien, with nowhere to hide. Her fingers drummed against the desk. It wasn't just about confrontation anymore. This could be a way to make him answer for 9 years of silence. The next morning, Olivia met Carla at their usual diner. The waitress poured coffee, and Carla didn't bother hiding her disapproval. "You've got that look," she said, pointing her spoon. "The one you had when you signed up for that salsa class with the guy who turned out to be married." "This is different," Olivia said. "Different how?" "You're poking a bear that eats lawsuits for breakfast." Olivia leaned in. "I've got something this time." "Proof." Carla raised an eyebrow. "I kept everything," Olivia said quietly. "Photos, dates, the DNA test. I never thought I'd use it, but," she took a deep breath, "if I show up with Emily, the world will see it for themselves." Carla shook her head. "That's not proof. That's drama. Drama gets attention," Olivia said, her voice firmer than she expected. "Attention gets pressure, and pressure might get us justice." 2 days later, she booked an appointment with a lawyer. The office was small, tucked between a nail salon and a bakery, nothing like the glass towers Damien's attorneys worked from. But Olivia liked that. Mara Jenkins greeted her with a firm handshake and sharp eyes. "I've read your email," she said, gesturing to a seat. "You're dealing with a man who has money, power, and a vested interest in pretending you don't exist. That means you need to be precise." Olivia opened the shoebox she'd brought, laying its contents on the desk. "This is what I've got." Mara examined each piece carefully. The DNA report, the ultrasound photo, the dated wedding pictures, a timeline Olivia had scribbled out on legal paper. "It's enough to start a case," Mara said finally. "But starting and winning are two very different things. He'll fight it. Hard. I know." Mara studied her for a moment. "If we go public, it'll get ugly. Your daughter's face could be in headlines. Are you ready for that?" Olivia hesitated. "No, but I'm more tired of him pretending she doesn't exist." Back at home, Emily was in the kitchen making a peanut butter sandwich, a smear of jelly already across her cheek. "Where were you?" she asked. "Running errands," Olivia said, reaching for a paper towel to wipe her face. Emily studied her for a moment, the way she always did when she sensed there was more to the story. "You look like you made a decision." Olivia smiled. Faintly. "Maybe I did." The night before she had to RSVP, Olivia sat at the kitchen table with the card in front of her. "Decline with regret. Accept with pleasure." Her pen hovered. Carla's voice echoed in her head. "That man nearly ruined you." Mara's warning followed. "It'll get ugly." But behind them both was Emily's voice, 9 years old and certain. "Maybe he's ready now." Olivia ticked the box for accept with pleasure. Then, in the guest name line, she wrote, "Olivia Grant +1." That she sealed the envelope before she could change her mind. The church looked like something stolen from a royal wedding special. Marble pillars rising to meet vaulted ceilings, sunlight pouring through stained glass and fractured beams of red, gold, and blue. The air smelled faintly of roses and old wood polish, the kind of place where even footsteps seemed too loud that we were late. Deliberately, Emily's small hand was in mine, her fingers warm but tense. She wore the pale cream dress I'd chosen that morning, modest, unadorned, and heartbreakingly similar to the one I'd worn to my own wedding. A ribbon held her hair back, the same shade of chestnut Damien's used to be before time, and stress silvered the edges. Outside, the limousine's tinted window reflected us together. I couldn't unsee it. The shape of her jawline, the way her eyes narrowed when she focused on something. His features, his blood, his daughter. The organ music was already playing when we stepped inside. I had timed it perfectly, just after. The procession had begun, just before the bride reached the altar. People were seated, attention forward, their murmured conversations settling into reverent silence. That silence cracked the second the heavy wooden doors opened. Every head turned. The sound of the hinges was deafening in the quiet hall, and my heels tapped slowly against the aisle runner. Emily stepped beside me, eyes wide but unafraid. She was used to being stared at, just not like this. Whispers started, like ripples spreading across a pond. I asked that. Who is? She looks just. Like, I kept my chin high. If Damien thought I'd slink in quietly, he'd underestimated me. The bride, Veronica Hayes, froze mid-step. The bouquet trembled in her hands. Her lace veil framed a face drained of color, her perfect composure cracking in real time. She knew exactly who I was. And from the way her gaze flickered to Emily, she knew exactly who Emily might be. Damien stood at the altar, hands clasped in front of him, the picture of billionaire confidence, until he saw US.IT was just a flicker at first. His smile faltered, eyes narrowing in confusion. Then recognition hit, and with it, something colder. His lips pressed into a line so tight it could have cut glass. Emily tugged my hand. "Mom," she whispered. "Why's everyone staring?" "Because they're surprised to see us," I said softly, my gaze never leaving Damien's. "Keep walking." The cameras clicked like machine gun fire. Smartphones rose into the air, lenses glinting. Within minutes, this moment would be online, dissected by strangers, gossip columnists, and shareholders alike. That I didn't stop. Each step down the aisle was deliberate. Not rushing, not slowing, just enough for the tension to coil tighter. Damien shifted, one polished shoe moving back as if he wasn't sure whether to approach or flee. When I reached the front row, I stopped, directly in Damien's line of sight. My hand rested gently on Emily's shoulder, presenting her without words. The resemblance was undeniable. The same sharp cheekbones, the same eyes, the same stubborn tilt of the chin. Gasps spread through the pews. The priest, caught somewhere between confusion and horror, cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should, Olivia," Damien said finally, his voice low, almost a growl. "What is this?" I smiled, the kind of smile that used to disarm him. "Congratulations, Damien. You look surprised. I'll handle this later." He glanced meaningfully at Emily, his jaw tightening. "Not here. Not now. Too late," I murmured, letting my eyes sweep the crowd. "It's already here. And it's already now." Veronica's voice cracked as she spoke. "Damien, who is she?" Her words were thin, brittle, but the venom behind them was unmistakable. Damien didn't answer her. He couldn't. Not with the weight of 50 stares pressing into him. Not with the cameras catching every twitch of his expression. Emily, oblivious to the undercurrent, smiled shyly at the bride. "Hi, I like your dress." The line landed like a blade between them. The organist had stopped playing. No one moved. Even the air felt still, like the whole church was holding its breath. Damien took a step toward us, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "You've made your point. Leave." I leaned in just enough for him to see the steel in my eyes. "Oh, Damien, I'm just getting started." Emily's hand tightened in mine, sensing something. Maybe not the history, but the heat of the moment. Somewhere in the back, someone's phone chimed with a breaking news alert. I straightened, turned slightly, so the room could see both of us together, mother and daughter. The daughter he had never claimed. The daughter who looked so much like him it hurt to look at her. "This," I said, my voice carrying easily through the vaulted ceiling, "is Emily." And then I let the silence do the rest. Damien's security escorted them away from the aisle, like they were carrying a live grenade. Olivia felt Emily's small fingers gripping hers so tightly it hurt, but she didn't let go. The murmurs from the guests trailed behind them like a shadow, phones still raised, the click of cameras echoing in her ears. They were ushered into a private lounge off the reception hall. Plush cream sofas, a champagne bar, an enormous painting of a seascape that felt like it belonged in a museum. But Olivia barely saw any of it. The door closed with a soft thud. Then he was there. Damien Cole. His tuxedo was cut to perfection, his tie a precise Windsor knot, his expression the same polished mask she'd seen on the covers of Forbes and GQ. But there was a flicker, barely, of something else in his eyes. Irritation, maybe fear. "What the hell are you doing here, Olivia?" His voice was low, but sharp enough to cut glass. Olivia kept her back straight. "You sent me an invitation." That wasn't. He glanced toward the door, exhaling sharply. You weren't supposed to, she cut him off. Emily, this is your father. Emily's eyes flicked between them, confusion clouding her features. You're my dad. Damien's jaw tightened. Olivia, this is ridiculous. It's not ridiculous, she said, reaching into her purse. Her hands didn't shake this time. She pulled out a sealed manila envelope and tossed it on the coffee table between them. It's science. That's a DNA test I had done when Emily was a baby. 99.9% match. Damien didn't even look down. You think you can crash my wedding and blackmail me in front of— This isn't blackmail, Olivia said. Her voice was steady, but her heart was pounding. It's called accountability. You've ignored your daughter for 9 years. That ends today. The door opened again. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped in, Damien's lawyer, Jonathan Pierce. Olivia remembered him from the divorce. He'd been the one to slide the prenup across the table with that smug little smirk. Ms. Grant, Jonathan said smoothly, I strongly advise you to reconsider whatever stunt you think you're pulling. You have no legal standing. Olivia reached into her bag again, pulling out another folder. Actually, I do. I've already filed a petition for child support and back payments. And considering Damien's net worth is currently estimated at over $4 billion, we're looking at quite a number. Damien's gaze hardened. You're doing this for money. Olivia took a step toward him. I'm doing this because Emily deserves to know her father didn't just walk away. He ran. You think I wanted this? I've worked 2 jobs for years while you've been sipping champagne on yachts. Emily's voice broke through, trembling and small. Why didn't you want me? The room went silent. Even Jonathan shifted uncomfortably. Damien's mask cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but enough for Olivia to see the man underneath. He looked at Emily, then away. It's complicated. No, it's not, Olivia said. You were scared it would ruin your image. And now, here we are, at your perfect wedding to your perfect bride, and the truth's finally in the room with you. Emily's lip trembled, and Olivia's chest ached. She wanted to shield her daughter from this, but some wounds needed sunlight. Damien's voice dropped to a near whisper. We can talk about this privately. Later. Olivia's eyes narrowed. No, we talk now. Because once I walk out of here, the media out there will know exactly why I came, and they'll see the DNA test themselves if you force my hand. Jonathan stepped forward, his tone clipped. Ms. Grant, threatening public exposure will not. I'm not threatening. I'm telling you how it's going to go, Olivia said. She met Damien's eyes. You're going to acknowledge Emily, publicly. You're going to support her, financially, yes, but more than that. She's going to know she matters to you. Damien's gaze flickered again toward Emily. Something in her eyes, his eyes, seemed to hold him still. Damien, Olivia said softly now, almost pleading. You can't undo the past, but you can stop adding to the damage. The silence stretched. Then Damien walked over to the coffee table, picked up the DNA envelope, and looked at it for a long moment before setting it back down. Give me a week, he said finally, to handle things. Olivia studied him. You have until the end of the week. After that, I go to the press. Jonathan started to object, but Damien lifted a hand. It's fine. I'll take care of it. Emily's voice came again, small but steady. So you are my dad. Damien didn't answer right away, but when he did, his voice was rough. Yes, I am. Tears blurred Olivia's vision, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. Security returned to escort them out. As they walked down the hall, Olivia felt Emily's grip tighten again. Mom, Emily whispered. Was that good? Olivia forced a small smile. It's a start. Behind them, in the closed room, Damien Cole stood alone, staring at the DNA envelope like it was a ticking bomb. The courthouse smelled faintly of polished wood and tension. Reporters crowded the marble steps outside, microphones clutched like weapons, their voices chasing Olivia up the stairs. Ms. Grant, is it true you blindsided Damien Cole at his own wedding? Do you believe Mr. Cole will admit to being the father? Are you seeking money or justice? Olivia kept her eyes forward, her hand curled protectively around Emily's small fingers. Her lawyer, Rebecca Lane, walked on her other side, a petite woman with sharp eyes and a voice like a scalpel. Inside, the courtroom was all cold formality and quiet judgment. Damien was already there, seated at the defense table, his suit immaculate, his tie knotted so perfectly it might have been drawn on. He didn't look at Olivia. Instead, he leaned toward his lead counsel, whispering something that made the man smirk. Emily sat in the gallery, in a row reserved for family, her legs swinging nervously. She was under strict instructions not to speak unless asked, a rule Olivia hated but understood. The judge, an older man with deep lines etched across his forehead, called the room to order. Case 2486, Grant versus Cole. This is a petition for paternity determination, child support, and retroactive payments. Rebecca rose, her voice cool and steady. Your Honor, the evidence will show that Mr. Cole knowingly abandoned his legal and moral responsibilities as a father for nearly a decade. He has the means, extraordinary means, to provide for his child, yet he chose to do nothing. Damien's attorney, Richard Lowell, stood next. His tone carried a faintly amused edge. Your Honor, my client is the victim of a calculated public ambush designed to damage his reputation and extract an undeserved fortune. This case is not about a child, it's about revenge. The words hit Olivia like cold water. She glanced at Damien, but he still wouldn't meet her gaze. The first witness was called, Anna Morales, a former personal assistant of Damien's. She looked nervous, tugging at her blazer sleeves as she took the stand. Ms. Morales, Rebecca began, were you employed by Mr. Cole in 2013? Yes, Anna said, voice wavering. And during your employment, did you become aware of Ms. Grant's pregnancy? Anna hesitated, eyes flicking to Damien. Yes, I overheard a conversation between Mr. Cole and his head of PR. They were discussing how to manage the optics. He said he didn't want the story getting out because it would ruin an upcoming deal. Rebecca's tone sharpened. Did he acknowledge that the child was his? A pause. Yes, he said, I'm not ready to be anyone's father. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Olivia's throat tightened. Richard Lowell rose for cross-examination, his smile slow and deliberate. Ms. Morales, isn't it true you were terminated for stealing client lists? Anna stiffened. No, answer the question. Weren't you fired for misconduct? Olivia could see the trap closing. Anna's credibility would be shredded, truth or not. Rebecca objected, the judge sustained, but the damage was done. The jury's eyes shifted, a few skeptical. The second day brought financial records. Rebecca slid glossy exhibits onto the screen. Bank statements, shell company transfers, luxury purchases in the millions. Your Honor, Rebecca said, we present evidence that Mr. Cole spent more on a yacht refit than the average American family earns in a decade, all while failing to provide even a single cent for his biological daughter. Damien finally looked at Olivia then, a flicker of heat in his eyes, part warning, part disbelief. She held his gaze, her spine straight. Though her heart was hammering. By the fourth day, the tension was suffocating. Social media buzzed outside the courtroom, hashtags multiplying. Paparazzi trailed Olivia and Emily every evening. Rebecca called Olivia to the stand. Ms. Grant, can you describe your financial situation in the years following your divorce? Olivia swallowed. I worked 2 jobs, waitressing at night, bookkeeping during the day. Some months, rent was late. I sold my wedding dress to pay for Emily's preschool. And did Mr. Cole ever offer assistance? No, he changed his number. His lawyers sent a letter saying all future communication should be directed to them, but they never replied. Rebecca let the silence linger. What made you decide to file this case now? Olivia's eyes shifted to Emily in the gallery. Because she started asking questions, and I was tired of teaching her to accept silence as an answer. Damien's cross-examination was a masterclass in calculated cruelty. Ms. Grant, Richard Lowell said smoothly, isn't it true that you received a generous divorce settlement? Olivia's voice tightened. I received what your client dictated in a prenup signed under duress. Under duress, or with full knowledge you'd walk away with enough to live comfortably? I walked away with barely enough to survive. Richard tilted his head. And yet you waited nearly 10 years to bring this matter before the court. Why now? Olivia glanced at the jury. Because justice doesn't expire. The breaking point came when Emily was called, something Olivia had fought against, but couldn't avoid once Damien's team insisted that Emily's shoes tapped nervously as she walked to the stand. She was small, pale, her braids neat. She looked at the judge like he might tell her a bedtime story instead of ruling on her life. "Emily," Rebecca said gently, "do you know why you're here today?" "To tell the truth," Emily said, softly. "And what do you know about your father?" Emily hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom said he wasn't ready to be a dad, but I thought maybe, one day, he'd change his mind." The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. "Emily," Rebecca asked, "is your father here today?" Emily looked straight at Damien. "Yes." Richard Lowell objected immediately, but the judge allowed it to stand. Rebecca took a step closer. "Do you want to say anything to him?" Emily's small hands gripped the edge of the witness box. Her voice wavered. "Why didn't you want me?" It was the question Olivia had never dared to say aloud. Damien's jaw clenched. For the first time since the trial began, his composure faltered. The judge called for a recess. Outside the courtroom, the air buzzed with flashbulbs and shouted questions. Olivia shielded Emily with her coat, Rebecca leading them through the swarm. "You did good in there," Rebecca murmured to Emily. Olivia looked back through the glass doors. Damien was standing inside, alone, his phone forgotten in his hand. He looked smaller somehow, like a man realizing the war he started might cost him more than money. And for the first time, Olivia believed they might win. The headlines were everywhere now. Billionaire CEO's secret daughter? Damien Hale's empire in jeopardy. At first, Damien's team tried to spin the narrative that Olivia was a bitter ex-wife, hungry for a payout. But the wedding photos had already gone viral. Side-by-side images of Damien at 25 and Emily at 9 made the resemblance impossible to ignore. By the second week of the trial, Damien's fiancée, Giselle, stopped showing up to court. Whispers rippled through the gallery when she removed all photos of Damien from her social media. By Friday, an official statement hit the press. She was calling off the wedding. The cracks in Damien's empire were widening. His largest shareholder demanded an emergency board meeting. A sponsorship deal worth millions was paused pending investigation. He still walked into the courtroom in his tailored suits and smug half-smile, but the circles under his eyes told a different story. Olivia, however, wasn't spared from the storm. Hate flooded her inbox. Strangers called her a gold digger, a liar, a manipulator. The online attacks were relentless. #Team Damien trended for days. Her lawyer, Miriam, advised her to stay offline entirely, but it was impossible to avoid the ripples. Even at the grocery store, she caught people glancing, whispering. The worst moment came when Emily came home from school quieter than usual. "What's wrong, baby?" Olivia asked, setting down the cutting board. Emily hesitated, then whispered, "Some girls said my dad's a bad man, and that I'm a mistake." Olivia froze. She'd prepared herself for court battles, for legal fees, for facing Damien again, but not for her daughter's innocence being wounded in such a way. She pulled Emily into her arms, her voice soft but firm. "You are not a mistake. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." The next morning in court, Olivia felt a new steel in her spine. Every attack, every headline, every cruel word only sharpened her resolve. Damien's lawyers approached during recess. One of them, a smooth-talking man with perfect hair, handed Miriam a folder. "Settlement offer. Confidential. 7 figures. No further contact with Mr. Hale." Olivia didn't even look at the number. "No," the lawyer blinked. "It's generous. More than most." "I said no," she repeated, her voice low but unwavering. "This isn't about money. It's about the truth." Miriam smiled faintly at her client's resolve, then slid the folder back across the table. The message was clear. That night, Olivia sat in bed, Emily asleep beside her, the hum of the city outside their window. She thought about the mansion she had left years ago, the cold marble floors, the echo of footsteps that never felt like home. She thought about the girl sleeping next to her, and the years of scraped knees, birthday candles, and whispered bedtime stories. Damien had taken so much, but not everything. And now, she was ready to take something back. The next hearing was set for Monday, and Olivia knew it would be the one that broke everything open. The final morning of the trial felt different. The city outside was draped in a low, gray mist, the kind that seemed to press against the courthouse windows as though even the weather held its breath. Olivia sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands resting on the smooth oak surface, fingers interlaced to keep them from trembling. Emily sat quietly beside her, clutching a small notebook, her comfort item through the endless weeks of testimony and legal wrangling. Damien was already there, across the aisle. His designer suit was immaculate, his cufflinks catching the pale overhead light. But there was something hollow in his expression, like the polished mask he had worn for years had finally started to crack. His legal team was a fortress of tailored wool and cold stares, shuffling papers as if the outcome might still be bent in their favor. The judge, an older woman with steel gray hair and a voice that brooked no nonsense, entered. The court stood, then sat again. The air was heavy, each creak of a chair sounding louder than it should. Olivia tried to steady her breathing. She had been told verdict days felt like this, a strange mixture of exhaustion and hyper-awareness, like running a marathon only to stop inches from the finish line. When the judge began to speak, her tone was measured, deliberate. Over the course of these proceedings, the court has heard extensive testimony, reviewed substantial documentary evidence, and considered the credibility of all parties. Olivia's lawyer, Mr. Harlan, sat with his hands folded, his face as calm as a man waiting for a bus, though she could see the faint tension in his jaw. The judge continued. The DNA test submitted to this court is conclusive. The defendant, Damien Rourke, is the biological father of the minor child, Emily Rourke. The court further finds that the defendant had knowledge of the pregnancy and, through deliberate actions, avoided his parental obligations. Olivia felt Emily's hand slide into hers under the table. The judge didn't stop. Accordingly, the court orders the defendant to pay retroactive child support dating from the child's birth in the amount of $4.8 million, in addition to ongoing support in accordance with the state's guidelines. Legal paternity is hereby established, with all rights and obligations therein. A murmur rippled through the courtroom, journalists scribbling notes, the clicking of laptop keys like a swarm of locusts. Damien's lawyer leaned toward him, whispering urgently, but Damien's eyes were locked on Olivia. There was no apology in them, no shame, only the icy calculation of a man already strategizing his next public move. The judge's gavel struck once. This court is adjourned. And just like that, it was over. Years of silence, of swallowing the truth, of financial strain and whispered rumors, all distilled into a single moment. The reporters pounced as soon as they stepped into the hallway. Flashbulbs erupted like gunfire. Olivia, how do you feel about the ruling? Do you think Damien will pay, or will he appeal? Emily, have you spoken to your father yet? Mr. Harlan shielded them with a protective arm, guiding them toward the exit. No statements today, he told the press, his voice firm. Outside, the mist had turned to a fine drizzle. Olivia pulled Emily's hood up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. For a moment, she just stood there on the courthouse steps, the stone cold under her heels, the world blurring into movement around her. Emily looked up at her. So, does this mean he has to be my dad now? Olivia hesitated. Legally, yes, but not like a real dad. Her throat tightened. Sweetheart, being a real dad is about more than paperwork. Emily's gaze drifted toward the waiting cars and the media vans. I don't think he wants to be one. Olivia crouched down so they were eye to eye. Then that's his loss. And it's not your fault. Emily nodded, but her expression was far older than her years. That night, Olivia sat alone in her apartment's small kitchen after Emily had gone to bed. The rain outside tapped against the window, steady and unrelenting. On the table sat the manila folder that had been her weapon for months. The DNA test, the old photographs, the bank statements. She had thought the verdict would feel like a victory. Instead, it felt like closing a door on a room she'd been trapped in for too long. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you've won. This isn't over. No name, but she didn't need one. She turned the phone face down, because here's the thing Damien would never understand. She hadn't gone to court for the money or for revenge. She had done it so Emily would never have to doubt her own story. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Billionaire mogul ordered to pay millions in secret daughter case. Damien Rourke's empire in crisis. Stock analysts on business channels speculated about his companies. PR experts dissected his downfall, and social media memes multiplied by the hour. One photo kept circulating, the shot of Olivia walking out of court, holding Emily's hand, her chin lifted just slightly as if daring the world to look away. But the one image Olivia couldn't shake was from inside the courtroom. Emily, sitting beside her, hearing a judge finally say, out loud, that she belonged. For years, they had lived in the shadows of Damien's choices. Today, for better or worse, they had stepped into the light. The boxes were stacked in uneven towers, each labeled in Olivia's neat, looping handwriting. Outside the wide front window, late autumn light spilled over the small yard, painting everything in muted gold. It had been 3 months since the verdict, 3 months since the media circus had moved on to fresher scandals, and yet the ripples of that day still touched everything in Olivia's life. Emily padded into the living room, her hair still damp from the shower, smelling faintly of lavender shampoo. She was wearing her favorite sweater, the one with the fraying cuffs, and her face held the peaceful alertness of a child who'd slept well for the first time in weeks. This room feels bigger than our old one, Emily said, standing in the center and turning slowly, as if measuring the walls with her eyes. It is bigger, Olivia replied, taping the last of the kitchen boxes. But that's not the best part. We have a backyard now, and no upstairs neighbors who blast bad music at midnight. Emily smiled faintly, then wandered over to the fireplace. It was small, a simple brick structure, but she crouched down like she was examining a relic. I like it here, she said. It feels quiet. That word, quiet, held more weight than Olivia cared to unpack aloud. After months of headlines, insults from strangers online, and whispered judgments at the grocery store, quiet felt like a fragile miracle that they'd chosen the house together. Olivia had shown Emily 3 options, all within the same school district, and let her make the final call. The girl had picked this one instantly, not because it was the newest or the biggest, but because of the lilac bush in the front yard and the way the sunlight fell across the kitchen table in the afternoons. Now, with the move nearly complete, Olivia felt something she hadn't in years: space to breathe. Still, the world outside their small sanctuary hadn't disappeared. Damien's name still popped up occasionally, in business journals, in gossip blogs dissecting his fall from grace. The glossy smile he'd once worn so easily had been replaced in the public imagination by the image of him in court, jaw tight, eyes avoiding the cameras. The papers had called the ruling a landmark decision. Olivia called it finally telling the truth out loud. 2 weeks after the move, the first letter arrived. It was handwritten, neat, deliberate script on expensive stationery, and addressed simply to Emily. Olivia didn't open it. She placed it on the kitchen counter and waited until Emily came home from school. Her daughter studied the envelope for a long moment, fingers tracing the embossed return address. Do you want to read it? Olivia asked gently. Emily shook her head. Not yet. Olivia didn't press. Instead, she slid the letter into a small box at the top of the hallway closet. Over the next month, 2 more letters came. Then a 4th, this one accompanied by an official visitation request through Damien's lawyer. The envelope sat unopened on the dining table until Emily came in, dropping her backpack with a thud. He wants to see me? Emily asked, reading the short cover note from Olivia's attorney. Yes, Olivia said, but it's not my decision. It's yours. Emily looked at her for a long moment, her gaze steady in a way that made Olivia's throat tighten. I'm not ready, she said simply. Then she picked up her backpack and disappeared into her room. The holidays came quietly that year. No grand plans, no elaborate decorations, just the 2 of them, stringing mismatched ornaments on a small tree in the living room. On New Year's Eve, they stayed up until midnight watching old movies and eating popcorn, the world beyond their walls fading into something distant and unimportant. It was in January that Olivia found the box. She'd kept it hidden for years, in the back of her closet, beneath a layer of old blankets. Inside were snapshots from another life, photographs of her and Damien in the early days, smiling in restaurants and on beaches, receipts from doctor's visits when she'd first learned she was pregnant, printouts of emails she'd once considered sending but never did, and the letters, dozens of them, written in moments of loneliness or anger, some addressed to Damien, others to no one at all. She'd never mailed them, never needed to. She sat on the floor with the box in front of her, the winter lights slanting in through the blinds. Emily found her there, cross-legged, holding one of the older photos. Is that you? Emily asked, pointing. Olivia smiled faintly. Yes, a long time ago. You look different, Emily observed. I was different, Olivia admitted. There was no bitterness in her tone, just the quiet acknowledgement of time passed and bridges burned. That night, after Emily had gone to bed, Olivia carried the box into the backyard. The air was crisp, the stars sharp and bright above her. She set the box in the small metal fire pit they'd bought for roasting marshmallows and struck a match. The flames caught quickly, curling the edges of the letters, turning photographs into curling ash. She watched until the last ember went dark. She wasn't angry. Not anymore. This was something else, a letting go. Spring arrived gently. Emily joined the school's art club and began coming home with paint on her sleeves, chattering about new friends and projects. Olivia found work she enjoyed, part-time consulting for a nonprofit, and began taking evening walks through the neighborhood. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch eating slices of watermelon, Emily leaned back in her chair and said, "I think I'll see him someday. Just not now." Olivia nodded. "That's okay. You get to choose when." The conversation drifted away into other things, summer plans, books they wanted to read. But Olivia carried the weight of Emily's words with her, not as a burden, but as proof of something hard won: her daughter's agency, her ability to decide for herself. By the time the lilac bush bloomed, their new life felt less like a transition and more like a home. There were still moments, a news headline, a lingering stare from a stranger, that tugged at the past. But they no longer defined the air they breathed. Olivia knew the world could still be cruel, that there would be more questions, more conversations, perhaps even more legal battles ahead. But she also knew this. They had already survived the worst of it on the last day of school. Emily ran out the front door waving her report card, cheeks flushed with pride. Olivia laughed and scooped her into a hug, the scent of lilacs heavy. In the warm air, for the first time in years, she let herself believe that the future, messy, unpredictable, entirely theirs, could be something worth running toward.